Good day traders, welcome back to another edition of our weekly market fix. We are very excited to see we have reached a small but yet significant milestone of 2,000 subscribers. So for each and every one of you, we want to say thank you and we are honored to be walking this trading journey alongside you. We would also like to remind all our viewers that we really appreciate you and want to see you become smart, successful traders. So if you have any suggestions on how we can make our channel better, we would love to hear from you. Now let's get into those charts. As per the custom, I think we will start by reviewing the trade setups that we put out last week, and then of course we can always come back to them and have a look at what we can expect for the week to come. So looking at the EURUSD, we had this trade setup put out, and we can see that we had the entry zone. This is the area we have in blue. It was a long trade, and the reason for this is we were expecting a new lower low in terms of the market structure, after which we then expect that a retracement to happen. And the area that we identified for that retracement is this area at about 1.176. So for now, we are still just below our first target at 1.163. Of course, we also have that second target at 1.168. That coincides with the monthly pivot. And from there, we have that full target. Once we reach this area, we will be looking for price action for a reversal back down and towards new lows. The other trade setup we had is the AUDUSD. Unfortunately, this setup did not work out. We had our stop loss right above that monthly R1 pivot and the daily 100 SMA. So that one did not work out. At this stage, I still think it's worthwhile to consider a possible trade, although I have not actually put this trade idea out yet. I'll first have to see what price action does, because it's always possible that we see a breakout from this diagonal area, which we have already seen happening on Thursday to Friday. So if we do see a strong reversal from this area back down, and which we do expect, we can then look at a trade setup similar to what I have on the screen. We will be looking to get lower and eventually back towards those lows at about 0.718. There was also a trade setup on USDCHF. The trade setup is still active. We can see we had a run towards the stop on Thursday, although it did not hit the stop loss. The stop loss is at 0.917. You can see as this week will progress, we will get some additional support from the daily 100 SMA. Obviously, ideally, we'll like to see price get back above the monthly pivot. They're currently sitting at 0.926, and once that happens, I do hope and do think that it's possible that we will be making new highs towards these areas of the first target at 0.936 and the full target at the monthly R1 at 0.942. Having a look now at some of our other trades. When we look at the GBPUSD, we are expecting something very similar to what we are seeing on the EURUSD. We have this new bearish trend that is emerging, although in the case of the GBPUSD, we can see it already has seen quite a nice pullback into this area of resistance that we've identified. So in terms of a target, it has now reached that target area. For this week, I'm expecting perhaps a move slightly higher still. We can see we have our monthly R1 and that daily 100 SMA still slightly above the highs of Friday, meaning if price can come into this area, show us some rejection, I would expecting price to start moving lower once again and heading towards the lows from the beginning of the month, and even lower lows from that area. Looking at the EURGBP, the EURGBP is currently in a bearish trend as well, although this bearish trend does appear to be much more mature than some of the others we've seen, and for this reason I am expecting some trend exhaustion, and that just typically means that we are looking for a last low, and I believe this is something that we might have seen on Friday. We have a very strong bearish candle settling on that monthly S2 pivot, so perhaps that could be the low. There is still some support just below where we are currently trading at 0.841. So from this area I am now expecting a reversal, and I believe once we get above, and we'll quickly just enable the projected pivots for next week. if you can get back above that new, just zoom in slightly, if you can get above this new weekly pivot at about 0.845, hopefully we can start seeing that reversal with the first target where we will meet some major resistance from that daily 200 SMA as well as the weekly R3 and monthly pivots. So an extremely strong area of resistance at 0.858. Moving on, let's have a look at the NZDUSD. The NZDUSD, I've also planned a possible trade set up for next week, and what we can see is we have some overhead diagonal resistance coinciding with this daily 200 SMA converging with that monthly R1 pivot. So definitely a strong area of resistance. This is at 0.709. And of course, in this situation, I would place a stop perhaps just close to our weekly R1 pivot at 0.712 in case this ends up being a breakout. However, if we do see that price action reversal from this area and we get a move, especially below the new weekly pivot, also coinciding with the daily 100 SMA, if we do move below this, I will probably expect price to start making new lows with these three targets at 0.696, 0.684 and 0.677 as the ultimate short target for now. And we can see that is just below the weekly S3 and also where we have our monthly S1 pivot. Looking at the EURCHF, looking at a bigger picture, we still have a very large head and shoulders pattern that we also pointed out last week. And at this point, we have a bearish trend still intact, and the next thing that we will be looking out for is a break below this area of support. On Thursday, we just briefly broke below it, with Friday seeing a spike back up, but closing very low on that candle. So that would indicate definitely sellers stepping in and trying to drive price lower. So if price were to break below 1.067, very good chance that we will see price starting to make new lows with a possible target at the weekly S3 pivot at 1.06. We did mention that we are seeing a very strong bullish breakout, and then we had our upper target set at 113.695. That was where we had our monthly R2 pivot. We can see price did indeed reach that area. So for this week, although I do think we will still see some upside, I would rather wait for some kind of pullback in order to get a better risk reward ratio. But if I do see that happening, I will likely put out a trade setup alert. Just briefly looking at the chart, I do suspect a good area for a new bullish entry would be somewhere where price comes back to test that daily 21 EMA. Likely we can be considering this area between the monthly R1 pivot and the weekly S1 pivot at about 112.750. Looking at our indices, the NASDAQ has now appeared to find some support from the daily 100 SMA. It has also made what seems like a very small little double bottoming pattern. With the yearly R1, I think the crucial area to keep an eye out for. We can see that sitting on that psychological level of 15,000. So for this week, this will be support. It coincides with the new weekly pivot. So as long as price stays above this level, I suspect it could be heading higher. An initial target and also keeping it conservative would be at that monthly R1, weekly R1 pivot level. That's at 15,386. So I do suspect we will see some resistance from that area. If, however, price does break back below this yearly R1 pivot and weekly pivot at 15,000, there will be some interim support, I'd say, at our weekly S1, that's 14,785. But if it does break below this area, we will likely see another correction deeper towards 14,400, and that will also be a very bearish indicator for the index. Looking at gold very briefly, gold, we had a trade setup out where we had a long trade. Unfortunately, the full target was never reached. The full target was set at 1,809. Although we did reach a second target, we had three targets. So we had the first target at 1,700, 1,776. We had a second target 1,796 and a full target 1,809. We ended up reaching the second target, and then we see that daily 100 and daily 200 SMAs turned out to be very strong resistance, and we saw price coming back into this area. The trend does appear to have turned to some extent, and we can even be looking at what could be a possible inverted head and shoulders. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly draw it out on the chart for you guys, so we can see that we have this type of left shoulder over there, we have the head there, and then the right shoulder over there. So you can see we had this little inverted head and shoulder token, meaning there is a good chance that we can see price starting to turn bullish again. But of course, this is only possible if price can stay at the level where it's currently trading. In the event of a bearish scenario, we would expect price to find some support from this new diagonal that is now formed at this 1,758 area. Looking at our cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin has now once again absorbed all demand from the all supply from this new supply zone, and has once again moved higher, also into a new supply zone. And we can see, if we look on the chart, looking back to April, where we had those previous highs of 65,000. So we are once again into this area of new supply zone. And the question would remain whether it once again can absorb all of the supply and make new highs, or whether we will see price finding some strong resistance from the yearly R3, as we've already started seeing. When was this? The 15th, so this was on Friday. So yeah, so we'll have to see whether we can overcome this level at 63,000 to make new highs. If, however, we see a retracement and we see a move back below that monthly R2 level at 58,600, then we can just look at our previous levels to look out for those areas of support. So the first area of support will then be at this area of 51,000, and if that level fails, then we have very strong support where we have our daily 100, 200, and this what pivot level is this, a yearly R2 pivot level, all converging on this 46,000 level. Concluding by looking at Ethereum, we can see Ethereum is also looking quite bullish, also has hit some strong resistance, firstly from this diagonal from previous all-time highs, currently trading just below the monthly R1 pivot. So if we do see a break higher, I've identified some targets. We can see we have our previous all-time high at that weekly R2 pivot, that's at 4,335, and then also a possible bullish target would be that monthly R2 at 4,600. And I'll also like to point out this possible inverted head and shoulders on Ethereum that we are noticing right over there. This could also be driving price most likely towards higher levels and new highs. It's also possible that we can see price coming back to retest that neckline, and that's sitting just below the weekly pivot at about 3,650. That concludes this week's video, and before we say goodbye, here is this week's pro trading tip. In trading, discipline is a key factor for success, so always plan your trades and then proceed to trade your plan. It is important to factor in multiple scenarios as to not get blindsided by any unexpected moves. So until next time, we wish you all the best of your trading. Remember, trade smart and trade successful.